Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is the show where we take that whole stack of source material you've got, the articles, the reports, the cultural critiques, and we just boil it all down for you.
Right into the most concentrated, most useful knowledge you can get.
And today, we are definitely not just giving you the basics. We're going far, far beyond any simple explainer. We are doing a genuinely deep exploration of a brand that, it really defines American culture, Levi's.
That's right. And our mission today is, well, it's a bit complex because the story of Levi's is just so full of contradictions. We're tracing this whole evolution from a company that started as this basic dry goods import business during the gold rush,
Right.
to its clothes becoming the uniform of rebellion, and now it's a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company.
So the goal here is to really get into that tension, the tension between its iconic, pioneering history and the huge corporate and environmental responsibilities that it has to deal with today.
Yeah.
And for you, the learner, we have pulled together a pretty exhaustive list of sources. We've got everything from the founding stories and some really surprising cultural analyses.
Oh yeah, like the discovery of some vintage pieces that tell a much, much darker story.
We'll get to that. And we also have the latest financial reports, FY 2024, and even their super detailed 2030 water strategy. Basically, if it affects the legacy or the future of that little red tab, we are covering it today.
And before we get into the really fascinating, and I have to say, sometimes uncomfortable history, we have a quick but important thing to address.
Absolutely. If you are getting value out of this level of detail, this kind of analysis, please just take a second to like this video, subscribe to us here on YouTube, and drop a comment.
Let us know what other complex topics you want us to tackle in a future deep dive. We read every single suggestion.
We really do. And you can also follow us for those quick insights and short-form nuggets on X and TikTok. The handle is at WhyItTV. That's WhyItTV.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this timeline.
Let's start at the beginning. To really understand the 501, you have to start with the man, Levi Strauss. And this isn't just a story about American grit. It's the absolute blueprint for a successful immigrant entrepreneur in the 19th century.
It really is. Levi Strauss was born in Bavaria, Germany, back in 1829. He grew up in a time of just immense economic hardship and political chaos in Europe.
And he didn't come to America alone.
No, he immigrated in 1847 to join his older brothers in New York City, and he went to work immediately in the family business, a wholesale dry goods company called J. Strauss Brother & Co.
And that background, that experience in wholesale dry goods is so crucial. It's the whole context for the biggest strategic decision he ever made.
In 1853, the gold rush is just raging. We have hundreds of thousands of people pouring into California, all obsessed with finding a fortune in the ground.
But not him.
Levi Strauss saw the opportunity completely differently. It wasn't in the, backbreaking, uncertain work of mining itself. It was in the certainty of supplying the miners.
And all the people supporting the miners?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he moves to San Francisco, opens a West Coast branch of the family business. He wasn't looking for gold. He was building a system.
It's the classic sell the shovels principle, but just on a massive scale.
A massive scale. He was importing everything from the East Coast, bolts of fabric, durable bedding, simple stuff like combs and accessories, everything that this booming, chaotic frontier town needed to function.
And by 1866, he was already a well-known, respected merchant in San Francisco. The business was just exploding.
And yet, the most revolutionary product, the thing that changed everything, it didn't even come from his own headquarters. It came from a very specific, localized need that was brought to him by someone else.
An external partner.
Jacob Davis.
Okay, so tell us about Jacob Davis.
Davis was a tailor over in Reno, Nevada. And he had this recurring problem that, every working man at the time would have understood. The pants he was making for loggers and railroad workers.
Tough guys.
Tough guys, yeah. The pants were durable, but the pockets, where all the stress was concentrated from tools and constant use, they just kept ripping away from the fabric. They needed a structural change.
A reinforcement.
His solution was brilliantly simple. Reinforcement. He used these small pieces of copper rivets, and he placed them right at the stress points.
So the corners of the pockets.
The pocket openings, and at the base of the button fly, it just anchored the fabric and thread, making the whole thing exponentially stronger.
But Davis was just a small tailor. He didn't have the money to patent the idea.
Exactly. So he goes to his fabric supplier, Levi Strauss, and asks for funding. Strauss immediately sees the potential. He knows this could be a mass-market, scalable product.
So they partner up?
They partner up, and on May 20, 1873, they secure U.S. patent number 139,121 for an improvement in fastening pocket openings. those iconic copper rivets.
So that date, May 20th, 1873, that's basically the birthday of the modern blue jean.
You could argue it's the true birth date, yeah. Well, Davis was the hands-on inventor. Strauss was the visionary. He had the capital, the supply chain, the infrastructure to turn this little idea into a massive product.
And what was the business structure like? The sources are pretty clear on this.
Right. Strauss owned the company, Levi Strauss & Co., and Davis was brought on initially as a shop supervisor, and then later he became a plant manager. He was the guy making sure the quality and consistency were there for these rugged pants.
And the company called them waist overalls.
Officially, yes.
Yeah.
Waist overalls. But the market, the customers, the miners, the loggers, they immediately started calling them Levi's.
So they named them after the supplier, not the product type.
They recognized the brand of the man they trusted. It's a huge early sign of just how powerful that brand name was becoming, even then.
Let's focus on the product itself for a second. The early markers of these garments, they were pure utility, right?
Absolutely. High waist, straight leg, and that button fly, which is still the signature feature of the classic 501 today.
But the way you kept them up is what's really fascinating. It shows you how different things were in the 19th century. Belt loops weren't standard.
Not at all. They didn't become common on Levi's until the 1920s. So the question is, how did you keep these incredibly stiff, durable pants from falling down?
You had two options.
Two key accessories. First, the cinch back. That's that little adjustable buckle strap on the back of the waistband. It allowed for small size adjustment.
And then you had suspenders.
Exactly. You had buttons sewn right onto the waistband for suspenders, which was the far more common way to hold up your trousers back then.
I mean, can you imagine trying to break in a pair of stiff raw denim with just a tiny strap and suspenders? No belt.
It makes you really appreciate how much we prioritize comfort in fashion now.
It really does. It just underlines that these were tools. They weren't fashion items.
Not yet. Now, Strauss was a very shrewd businessman. He knew that the patent for the copper rivet was going to expire. It was set to expire around 1890.
And after that, anyone could legally make riveted pants.
Anyone. So he had to make a move to solidify the identity of the original riveted pant.
So what did he do?
In 1886, ahead of the patent expiring, they introduced the iconic two-horse brand leather back patch.
And this wasn't just branding. It was a strategic move.
A legally strategic move. The image itself, two horses trying and failing to rip a pair of Levi's apart, was designed to communicate superior strength, even to customers who couldn't read.
So it was about establishing Levi's as the OG, the authentic original article.
Before the patent went into the public domain and competitors flooded the market. It was brilliant.
Okay, so we're moving now from this moment of, technical innovation and smart business strategy into a much more sobering and, frankly, a very complicated part of the company's early history.
Yeah, this is a period that really forces us to look beyond the simple pioneer myth and confront some painful realities. We're talking about the years right after the Chinese Exclusion Act.
This is a critical detail, and one that the sources really bring to light. It moves us way beyond the marketing narrative.
It does. The material shows that vintage Levi's from the 1880s, like a pair that was recently found in a mine shaft and sold for over $87,000.
$87,000.
Oh yeah, they had a very distinct and a deeply disturbing label on them.
And that label read, "The only kind made by white labor."
The only kind made by white labor. It's a stark, shocking piece of historical evidence. And it immediately changes your perception of the brand.
So we have to contextualize this. We have to understand why that label appeared. And it's all tied up in the U.S. Congress passing the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882.
That act was, it was an unprecedented and devastating piece of federal law. It was the first significant law restricting immigration to the U.S. Based purely on nationality and race.
And the political pressure for this was coming from where?
Overwhelmingly from intense anti-Chinese racism, which was just rampant, especially in the West. San Francisco was the epicenter of it.
Right. As the economy was struggling in the 1870s, white workers started seeing Chinese immigrants, who were essential to building the West's infrastructure, as direct competition for jobs.
Exactly. So putting that label on their product was a direct corporate response to that fear and that bigotry.
And the legal environment at the time basically allowed for this discrimination?
It actively facilitated it. The sources bring up this horrific 1854 California Supreme Court case, People v. Hall, which went so far as to prevent Chinese individuals from testifying against white individuals in court.
Which means Chinese laborers had no legal recourse if they were victims of theft, violence, abuse, nothing. The system itself was rigged against them.
Utterly. So when Levi's put that white label on their jeans, it wasn't just a marketing slogan. It was a form of political signaling.
It was an alignment.
It was an assurance to their core customer, the white working class, that this product adhered to the prevailing and legally mandated segregationist ideas of the time.
It was a clear choice, prioritizing profit and market share over any kind of ethical labor standard.
And looking at this detail is so essential because it forces a much deeper, more critical understanding of corporate values, especially during times of intense social and economic pressure.
It shatters the myth that these iconic brands somehow exist outside of the toxic social currents of their time.
It shows how even a progressive, immigrant-founded company could capitulate to or even actively participate in a discriminatory environment just to survive.
The story doesn't end there. The historical record shows that they didn't stick with this policy forever.
No, they didn't. The sources indicate that the policy was reversed within a decade. By the 1890s, the leadership of Levi Strauss & Co. had started to publicly speak out against the nation's discriminatory and racist policies.
So was that a genuine moral shift? Or did they just recognize that the racist label was no longer a good business decision?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? The fact that they were speaking out publicly in the 1890s suggests a moral evolution, maybe anchored in the founders' own values. But the existence of that white labor artifact and its high value today is a reminder that the brand's legacy, just like America's history, is woven with these incredibly complex, contradictory, and challenging threads.
Okay, the next major pivot is the cultural one. This is how the garment went from being tough, waist overalls, a tool for working men, to the global uniform of rebellion, leisure, and counterculture.
How did it escape the logging camps of the West Coast?
Right. It starts with the pursuit of leisure in the 1930s.
The 1930s saw the rise of the dude ranch. This phenomenon where the American public became really romanticized by the idea of the frontier. People from the East Coast especially would travel out west for vacation to immerse themselves in that rugged lifestyle.
And what do you wear when you go to a dude ranch? You wear what the real cowboys and ranch hands wear.
Exactly. You wear these durable, tough denim pants. And what was crucial is that these travelers, they didn't just wear them on vacation, they took them back home with them,
Back to New York, Chicago.
spreading the use of jeans far beyond the West Coast working class.
And it was right around this time in 1934 that Levi's made a genuinely radical move when it came to gender.
A truly revolutionary act.
Yeah.
They introduced the first line of jeans specifically for women. They called them Lady Levi's.
And this was a big deal. I mean, at the time, women wearing pants in daily life was still considered pre-scandalous.
Socially unacceptable, for the most part. Now, Lady Levi's were mostly just adjusted versions of the men's 501s, and they were intended for wear on those dude ranches or for camping. But it was the first time a major manufacturer validated trousers for women. It was the beginning of a slow process of fashion liberation.
And the next huge accelerator for this cultural shift was World War II.
Right. During the war, the U.S. government classified jeans as an essential commodity. So production was restricted, and it was focused almost exclusively on workers in the defense industry, shipbuilders, factory workers.
So that cemented its association with vital patriotic work.
It did. But the global effect came from the American servicemen, the GIs. They wore them off-duty when they were overseas.
And people saw them?
And people saw them across Europe, across Asia. And the denim jean became this global cultural signifier of American life, of democracy, of a certain kind of freedom. It was a soft power export.
So by the 1950s, the term waist overalls was totally irrelevant.
Completely. Teenagers, driven by pop culture, started calling them jeans.
Yeah.
And Levi's, recognizing this huge cultural shift, officially adopted the term in all their advertising and labeling by 1960.
And this is the era where Hollywood really weaponizes denim. It goes from utility to controversy.
You can pinpoint the exact moment. Marlon Brando in The Wild One, 1953, he didn't just wear the 501, he redefined it.
It became the uniform.
The visual, physical uniform of youthful defiance, of rebellion against conformity. That dark, stiff, unwashed denim, it signaled you were an outsider.
And at the same time, Marilyn Monroe was doing something totally different with denim for women.
She was reimagining it, blending that rugged practicality with this empowering, subtly sexualized style. She made the 501 look not just tough, but transformative.
And that dual popularity across gender lines is what really cemented its role as a cultural statement.
Then the late 1960s took the 501 and transformed it again, turning it into a customizable blank canvas for the counterculture.
Right, the era demanded individuality, a rejection of mass production.
Absolutely. The denim was no longer sacred. It was dyed, bleached, frayed, cut off, covered in patches, peace signs.
The sources mention a specific example from Woodstock in 1969.
Someone had a massive yellow owl painted across their 501s. And this DIY customization also led to new shapes, like cutting the hems and sewing in fabric to create the bell-bottoms of the early 70s.
But the cultural weight wasn't just about aesthetics in music. It was deeply political.
Profoundly functional. The 501 became the staple uniform for civil rights organizers and activists, including leaders like Martin Luther King Jr.
So why denim? What was the signal there?
Wearing that workwear was an immediate sign of solidarity with blue-collar workers, with the working class. It was a rejection of the formality of suits. And it was just incredibly practical for long days of marching and organizing.
And because it had already bridged that gender gap, it was worn by everyone.
It was worn ubiquitously by men and women in groups like the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. So it became an immediate symbol of gender equality and unified purpose. It spoke of shared struggle.
And this incredible cultural power, it didn't just stop at the American coast. It eventually breached the ultimate ideological wall.
The Iron Curtain. And this is maybe the most powerful testimony to the symbolic weight of denim. In November 1978, Levi Strauss began large-scale official shipments to the Soviet bloc.
And these weren't just pants.
They were not just pants. They became immediate, highly prized markers of status and, more importantly, of liberation for Soviets who had been starved of Western culture.
The sources have these really poignant quotes from people who lived through that. A Moscow teacher in 1991 described buying her first pair of 501s as one of the happiest moments of her life.
It made her feel young, connected
Yeah.
to the outside world. It just highlights how the garment completely transcended fashion. It was a proxy for democratic ideals, one of the top U.S. cultural exports of the entire Cold War.
All right, let's pivot now to the modern company. The Levi's of today is a global, multi-billion-dollar corporation, and it's grappling with financial structures and consumer debates that, Levi Strauss himself could never have imagined.
That's right. And the corporate structure itself is worth a closer look because it really reveals the company's priorities. So after 34 years as a private company, Levi's went public again in an IPO in March 2019.
Trading on the NYSE as LEVI.
Right. But this wasn't just a typical IPO. It seems like they engineered the whole thing to protect the brand from the very volatility that defines Wall Street.
How do they do that?
They're deliberately anchored against short-term market pressures through the continued concentrated control of the Haas family, the descendants of Levi Strauss. And they do this using a dual-class stock structure.
Okay, so break that down for us. What does that mean for the average investor?
Well, it essentially means that not all shares are created equal. The Haas family descendants hold what's called Class B common stock.
Yeah. And the key difference is?
Each share of that Class B stock gets 10 votes. The Class A stock that's sold to the public only gets 1 vote per share.
So even if the public owns most of the equity, the family still has overwhelming voting control.
That's the anchor. It concentrates control with insiders, and it limits the ability of outsiders, like activist investors, to force a merger or a hostile takeover, or to make big decisions just to boost quarterly earnings.
So that structure is really the most important factor in understanding their long-term strategy.
It is. It helps them resist purely profit-driven sacrifices.
Which seems critical, especially when you look at this decades-long debate over product quality. If the family is protecting the legacy, why are there so many consumer complaints about quality going down?
That is the essential tension. You see these common criticisms everywhere. Inconsistent sizing, zippers failing on non-501 models, a general sense that the fabric quality has declined.
Thinner fabric, shorter cotton fibers.
Right. And this is often attributed to cost-cutting, as the brand pivoted from pure utility, from those buy-it-for-life overalls, to high-volume fast fashion.
So if they're anchored against short-term pressures, why would they still cut costs in a way that erodes customer trust? Because trust is the bedrock of a legacy brand like this.
The answer seems to be in market segmentation and profit maximization. They have a massive global footprint, and they need to hit a whole bunch of different price points.
Which leads to this thing that consumers have been trying to figure out for years, the subtle difference between a premium Levi's product and a mass market one.
The secret code.
Right, the secret code. And it comes down to a tiny detail.
Yes, the premium distinction. which people often try to identify by the capitalization on the red tab or the back patch.
Okay, so what are they looking for?
They're looking for the back patch where the entire word is in uppercase, Levis. That's usually seen as the higher quality product, the one sold in their own stores.
As opposed to?
The lowercase e, Levis, which often appears on cheaper items you'd find in a department store or a mass retailer.
That's fascinating. So the company is using a hidden code to segment its market and manage a tiered pricing structure.
Precisely. The goal isn't to stop making quality jeans. It's to maximize profit by selling different quality levels through different channels.
But despite all that variance, the classic 501, the buttonfly model, it still gets consistent praise.
It does. It remains the constant in their product line. Consumers cite it as the most consistently high quality and durable product they make.
Especially if you take care of it properly.
Especially if you don't overwash it, you hang it to dry. The issue isn't their capability to make a good product. It's the broader profit-driven model.
And for someone who is truly dedicated to that buy it for life philosophy, there are alternatives out there.
For sure. Brands like Wrangler or the more niche raw denim companies like Ironheart or Sugarcane, they often offer demonstrably better quality using thicker denim. For a small price increase, you get something that really does last forever.
Which frames Levi's mainstream model as being more about a balance of heritage and profit, rather than just pure durability.
Exactly.
Okay, moving to the recent corporate snapshot. The FY 2024 annual report gives us some really clear data on where the company is focusing its resources now.
The numbers are big. Net revenues for fiscal year 2024 were $6.355 billion. The core Levi's brands business was up 4%.
And a significant milestone they noted was becoming the top women's denim brand in the U.S.
Which is a direct result of them leveraging their full range of fits and styles engineered specifically for women, building on that legacy that started with Lady Levi's way back in 1934.
And their strategy for future growth is laser-focused on one channel.
Direct-to-consumer. The DTC-first strategy. By the end of FY 2024, that channel was responsible for 46% of total net revenues.
Why is that shift so crucial for them?
It gives them higher margins, for one. It also lets them control the brand experience completely. And most importantly, it gives them direct data and feedback from the consumer, which lets them optimize inventory and marketing instantly.
And they are aggressively expanding it.
Adding 46 more of their own stores in 2024 alone.
This big emphasis on efficiency and streamlining has led to a major internal restructuring.
That would be Project Fuel. It's a multi-year global productivity initiative they approved in 2024. The stated goal is to accelerate that DTC strategy by simplifying processes and cutting costs.
Now, when a $6 billion company announces a productivity initiative, you have to wonder, is Project Fuel just a corporate buzzword for layoffs?
Well, the sources confirm the reality behind the buzzword. The initiative resulted in about $188 million in restructuring charges in FY 2024, mostly for severance and employee benefits.
So yes, it's a clear sign that the streamlining involves significant job reductions as they consolidate operations.
Right. They're trying to become more nimble and data-driven.
We also have some insight into their other brands. It seems like not everything is performing as well as the core Levi's brand.
No, the Dockers brand, for example, is under evaluation for strategic alternatives.
Which means they might sell it.
They're openly considering a sale, yes. And their acquisitions haven't been smooth sailing either. The Beyond Yoga acquisition, which was meant to get them into the high-growth athleisure market, has run into some serious turbulence.
How significant are we talking?
It's a substantial financial hit. The company took over $100 million in goodwill and trademark impairment charges in FY 2024 related to Beyond Yoga.
Wow. So that means the brand just wasn't performing at the level they expected when they bought it.
Not even close. It really shows how hard it is to absorb a new, niche, high-growth brand into a massive legacy corporate structure that's used to selling workwear.
But despite all these internal adjustments, the brand's cultural presence is still massive, and we saw that with their big 2024 marketing push.
The Global Reimagine campaign featuring Beyoncé.
Right.
And that campaign was centered on their most iconic products, the 501 90s cut, the original trucker jacket. It's a clear move to reaffirm their place at the center of culture through these huge celebrity partnerships, making sure the icon stays relevant for new generations.
All right, let's tackle the fundamental challenge of modern global apparel manufacturing. The immense, often invisible supply chain and Levi's attempts to manage its massive environmental footprint, specifically water.
The global sourcing reality is, well, it's dizzying. Levi's sources nearly all of its products from independent contract manufacturers in about 120 countries,
Key hubs being China, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Turkey, Mexico.
to name a few. And this geographical diversification is a business necessity, but it also introduces just a tremendous amount of risk.
How so?
Well, the sources highlight how volatile this model is. Levi's relies on these contractors, but they don't have material long-term contracts with most of them. So their supply chain is highly exposed to, macroeconomic conditions, geopolitical conflicts, raw material shortages in over 100 different places at once.
And the single biggest raw material by a huge margin is cotton.
Cotton is nearly 90% of the raw materials they source every year.
Yeah.
And here's the core sustainability challenge. Growing that cotton accounts for a staggering 75% of the total water withdrawals in their entire supply chain.
So 3/4 of their water impact happens before the fabric even gets to a factory.
Before it's even spun into thread. And where is this cotton coming from? Over 75% of it is grown in just 4 countries: India, Pakistan, the US, and Brazil.
When you realize that, their sustainability strategy suddenly looks less like a moral goal and more like a critical risk management strategy.
Because climate change directly threatens the supply of the one thing that defines their brand.
So, recognizing this huge water pressure, Levi's launched a major intervention over a decade ago, the waterless innovation.
Launched in 2011, yeah. This is a process engineered to reduce water use in the denim finishing process. The washing, the rinsing, the softening that happens after the garment is sewn.
And how effective has it been?
It can reduce water use by up to 96% in those specific steps. It's been a notable success. They've saved over 1 billion liters of water, and right now about 40% of their jeans are made using this process.
But since 75% of the problem is in the raw materials, the strategy has to go beyond the factory floor. It has to go all the way back to the field.
To the river basin. This is why their 2030 water strategy is so technical. Their own analysis shows the primary impact drivers are Tier 1, which is garment manufacturing and dyeing, and Tier 4, which is cotton cultivation.
And while dyeing uses a lot of water and creates pollution,
The bulk of the water withdrawal happens in the fields at Tier 4.
which means they can't just mandate better practices, they have to actually invest in watershed restoration in the highest risk regions.
Exactly. They identified 11 river basins globally for high impact potential, and they prioritized 3 for immediate action:
Those were
the Sutlej River Basin and the Indus River Basin in Pakistan and the Mega River Basin in Bangladesh.
That is heavy. They're making corporate decisions based on the hydrological stability of major South Asian rivers. Why focus so heavily on those 3?
Because they're simultaneously highly water-stressed
Mhm.
due to over-extraction and climate change, and they are central to Levi's and the entire apparel industry's cotton supply and dyeing capacity.
So action there isn't just goodwill, it's protecting their future material supply from drought and extreme heat.
It's survival, especially in Bangladesh, which is a critical hub for apparel, but it faces serious freshwater pollution from all the textile dyeing waste.
And how are they tackling that pollution?
That's the key pillar of their Tier 1 strategy. They're committed to the ZDHC, the Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals Initiative. They've achieved champion status for 5 straight years.
Which requires them to work very closely with their suppliers to clean up wastewater and phase out harmful chemicals. A huge, costly undertaking.
A massive undertaking that needs constant monitoring.
Looking at climate action more broadly, the sources detail their alignment with the global push to net zero.
Levi's goal is net zero GHG emissions by 2050. But here's the stark reality check. Because they rely almost entirely on contract manufacturing and raw material sourcing Scope 3 emissions.
Everything in the supply chain they don't directly own or control.
And represents over 99% of their total emissions.
99%. That makes hitting that 2050 goal dramatically harder than it would be for a company that makes its own stuff. They have to influence hundreds of suppliers and farmers.
It is the single biggest mountain they have to climb. That said, they have shown significant progress in the tiny area they do control, their own operations.
Their Scope 1 and 2 emissions.
Right, from their stores, offices, distribution centers. Those are down 77% since 2016. And they do that through real investments in clean energy in their own infrastructure.
Can you give us a concrete example of that?
Sure. Their massive distribution center in Henderson, Nevada. It has a solar array built right over the parking lot.
Oh, I've seen pictures of that.
It provides about 20% of the facility's electricity, and, as a no side benefit, shades employees' cars from the crazy Nevada heat. But more broadly, they're using financial mechanisms to tackle their energy use.
Like the Virtual Power Purchasing Agreement, the VPPA. That's a term that gets thrown around a lot. What exactly is it?
A VPPA is essentially a financial contract. Levi's agrees to buy the energy credits from a new renewable energy project, like a wind farm, at a fixed price for many years. Crucially, they don't get the physical electricity. That still goes to the local grid.
So it's a financial hedge.
It's a brilliant financial hedge. It guarantees the developer a stable revenue stream so they can get financing to build the project. And for Levi's, it lets them claim the renewable energy usage, which reduces their exposure to energy price volatility and immediately lowers their reported climate impact.
So they're stabilizing their own costs while also funding clean energy development. That's a pretty sophisticated move.
It is. They have one for the Sunflower Wind Farm in Kansas, partnering with Walmart and others to share that big investment.
And on raw materials, they're investing in things like the Organic Cotton Accelerator.
That's the Tier 4 focus. They're collaborating with groups like the OCA to source sustainable and organic cotton directly from farmers in India and Pakistan. Again, this is essential for managing the material risk from climate change in South Asia.
And beyond just materials, they're focused on circularity, trying to keep clothes out of landfills.
Which is crucial for their brand image. The most visible part of that is the Levi's tailor shop in many of their stores for repair and redesign.
A return to that durability promise from the 1880s?
Exactly. And they also have the Levi's secondhand program, a buyback and resale platform.
And the impact of that is measurable, right?
Highly measurable. One study shows that buying an item secondhand reduces its carbon footprint by a remarkable 82% compared to making a new one. That's a powerful incentive for them.
Finally, we have to look at the social and labor side of that supply chain in those 120 countries. If the workers are unstable, the whole chain fails.
Right. Their worker well-being initiative from 2011 aims to go beyond basic legal compliance. It focuses on gender equity, respectful workplaces, and better worker-manager communication.
The idea being that when workers are treated fairly, business performance improves.
Better quality, better efficiency, better retention, and they're using financial incentives to reinforce these standards.
The Sustainable Supply Chain Finance programs.
They use those programs, with partners like HSBC, to offer preferred payment terms to suppliers who meet high environmental and social standards, basically rewarding compliance with better cash flow. It proves that doing the right thing can actually be profitable.
So we started this deep dive with Levi Strauss, the immigrant merchant in San Francisco, with a keen eye for supply and demand. And we end it looking at a global corporation using financial instruments like VPPAs and managing water flow in the Indus River Basin.
And that full context is so vital for you, the learner. Analyzing that entire span, from the moral failure of the white labor label to the sheer complexity of a modern supply chain in water-stressed Pakistan, it just fundamentally changes how you understand the brand.
Right. You see it not as this static icon, but as a constantly shifting entity.
A company that is forever balancing its powerful pioneering legacy with modern financial pressures, like the costs of Project Fuel or shedding brands like Dockers, or absorbing huge impairment charges from an acquisition that didn't work out.
And those sustainability commitments, they really prove that brand longevity now is inseparable from environmental stewardship.
The very cotton that defines the 501 is tied directly to these highly vulnerable ecosystems. The company's long-term survival depends on managing that risk successfully across 120 countries.
And for you, the learner, please remember that this deep dive is just one piece of the puzzle. We have built an entire WhyItV series dedicated to Levi's.
If you want the fundamental basics, go watch The Explainer.
If you want the nuanced opinions and the points of contention, check out the debate and the critique and the infographic for a visual look at all this complex data.
This comprehensive depth ensures you walk away with a complete, multifaceted, and critically engaged understanding of this cultural and commercial giant.
And don't forget, new deep dives drop YouTube first every single Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, with short-form content hitting TikTok throughout the following week. Follow us at WhyItTV.
And as we close, let us leave you with this final provocative thought. The 501 has served as the enduring uniform for American counterculture, for liberation, embraced by rebels like Marlon Brando and organizers like Martin Luther King Jr.
So the question is, Can a brand remain a constant symbol of rebellion, freedom, and timelessness when its ability to produce that iconic fabric depends entirely on successfully mitigating the intense climate and water security risks facing some of the world's most politically and environmentally vulnerable river basins?
A question worth considering.
Until our next deep dive, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you next Friday.